system has melted down, and virtually every asset has been plundered. And as a result, we've had a deflation in terms of, if you would define it, as far as falling prices. And over the years, of course, there's been a debate, even prior to this meltdown, that we might reach the point where the Federal Reserve would be pushing on a string, so that no matter how much credit they wanted to create in the economy, it just didn't happen. So obviously, to this point, that's what we're experiencing. Now, the question is, Bert Doman points out, and a number of deflationists say that, okay, so let's say hypothetically the Fed's expanded up to 11, 12 trillion, whatever, just a trillion here or there, but conversely, there's been 50 trillion that has just vaporized globally, that's just gone to money heaven. And so he thinks that in spite of the inflation in terms of monetary expansion that the Fed's going to do, that we're not going to get out of this, and that the dollar is not going to go into hyperinflation. So I guess what I'm really asking is a timing issue, but that affects all of us as investors, and so I was wondering if you all would comment. Do you think that deflation is going to continue for a long period of time and then convert to hyperinflation, or what? Where are we stand in this cycle?
Well, I think one fundamental confusion that should be cleared up is that the basic process that we're talking about is a process whereby the government finances its operations not through taxes, not through legitimate borrowing, which would be very limited, by the way, if it ultimately had to be paid for by taxes, but through the printing of money. That's what's happening now. Now, the secondary effects of the printing of money are what the question addresses. But the fundamental problem is that that power is slipping from our hands even more than ever because of the ability of the government to finance these huge deficits, and the huge deficits, by the way, that elder care is going to charge us through the printing of money. The secondary effects are somewhat debatable. I personally believe that price inflation, which is what the mainstream normally confuses with inflation, is not going to occur in the next 2-3 years because we have such slack resources. We have such a high unemployment rate. It's almost never occurred that that you could have that kind of acceleration of inflation with those kinds of slack resources. So very possibly we will not have severe price inflation. We will, however, have the other fundamental insidious evil of government deficits, looming government deficits, financed increasingly through the printing of money as the Obama administration decides to spend money on whatever it wants to and arrogate human resources in whatever way it wants to.
Yes, Warren.
I'm sure Gene is a better forecaster than I am, so I won't. I'm going to make a different comment than your question. A big confusion that we've heard up here is that the Fed determines interest rates. Completely false. The market determines the interest rates. The interest rates we see are market determined. The Fed uses the federal funds rate, overnight interest rates, as a mechanism for doing what it does do, which is control the money supply. That's the way it gauges how much money it's going to put into the system. So don't think that the Fed determines interest rates, nor that they determined interest rates even during the criticized period of 2002-2004. Markets determined those interest rates. There was a global glut of savings in the world. Much of it flooded into the United States and kept interest rates very low.
Tom?
All right. Well, on the global savings glut, I'll leave to Gene. But in terms of the market setting interest rates, well, we're not saying that the Fed goes to a local bank and says you should charge X% on this loan. I mean, we're not making a trivial claim like that. We're instead saying that when the Fed increases the money supply through the banking system, the banks now have more to lend. And so something's got to give here. If they're going to lend it, they're either going to have to lower their lending standards or they're going to have to lower the interest rate at which it's offered. So indirectly, the Fed does determine interest rate.
Well, and not just that's the key point, that it does it through the expansion of the money supply, but that's also the reason why I offered to Warren the simple anecdote of what truly happened over the last several years as the bubble was happening. The Federal Reserve set the overnight interest rate at 1%. That's impossible for a market to ever believe in because it was beneath the rate rate of inflation. That would not be a market-determined interest rate. That interest rate was moving the one-year rate, and the one-year rate was setting the very, very low adjustable rate mortgage rate. So in that sense, sometimes it does control interest rates at the short end of the yield curve, but more importantly, as my colleague pointed out, it basically affects interest rates all along the yield curve because of its ability to expand the money supply, because those loanable funds weigh on the interest rate.
All right, our
To
time.
sum up, I would simply say my colleague Steve Moore at the Wall Street Journal reports that his source of the Treasury Department says they're printing money 24/7, literally 24 hours a day they're printing money. So somewhere we're going to see that show up in the economy. That will give you an opportunity to have a great debate about the Fed's role and its mistakes. You should have two plans when that debate happens. Plan A is what you may really want, and Plan B is what you can get. And it's prudent and rational for all of you to want your Plan A if you wish it, but to also have a Plan B in your hip pocket. And we've tried to provide both for you today.
Well, the timer has been flashing, indicating that our time is up. So I'd like to thank our panel very much for participating, and I think it's been a very informative and lively debate. Thank you very much.
Warren Coates served with the International Monetary Fund for 26 years before retiring in 2003. He's currently director of the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority and an advisor to the Central Bank of Iraq. John Fund was a member of the Wall Street Journal's editorial board from 1995 to 2001 and writes a weekly column for Opinion Journal. Gene Epstein has been the economics editor and a columnist for Barron's since 1993. He's the author of Econospinning, How to Read Between the Lines When the Media Manipulates the Numbers. Thomas Woods is the author of 9 books, including The Church and the Market and The Politically Incorrect Guide to American History. This event was part of FreedomFest 2009 held in Las Vegas. For more information, visit freedomfest.com.